story of Frau Holle, Mother Holle. And I apologise for my appalling pronunciation here. This is a story which it sort of feels a little bit like a prologue to Cinderella, but do bear with me. There was once a widow who had two daughters. And one daughter was her own from her marriage. The other daughter was a stepdaughter. And the stepdaughter worked very hard. She was fair of face and kind and loving. And it fell to the stepdaughter to clean the kitchen and do the cooking and do all the work. And one of the pieces of work that she did was she did the spinning. She would take sheep's fleece or she would take flax and spin it into yarn which can be used for weaving or knitting. And she worked very hard at this with her drop spindle. This is my drop spindle. And she would sit on the edge of a well and with her nimble fingers would make beautiful thread. And one day, as she was spinning, the spindle seemed to jump out of her hands and fell down the well. And she thought, what am I to do without my spindle? So the poor girl had no choice but to jump after it, jump down the well looking for her spindle. And she found herself not at the bottom of a water well as she had imagined, but she found herself in another land. And the sun was shining and the grass was green. And she walked along the path in front of her. And after some time, she came to an oven. And from inside the oven, little voices were calling out, saying, take us out, we are starting to burn. For in the oven, there were lots of loaves of bread. And so the maiden, being of kind heart, took the burning loaves out of the oven and placed them on the grass. And the loaves laughed and chuckled and thanked her. And she carried on a little bit further along the path, and there was an apple tree. And the apple tree called to her and said, our apples are ripe, our apples are ready to pick. Please shake our branches so the apples will fall down and people can eat them. So the maiden shook the boughs of the apple tree, and the apples fell down on the ground. And the apple tree thanked her. And the maid carried on a little further along the path, and there she found a trim little cottage with a well-tended vegetable garden. And she opened the door to the cottage and asked the woman inside for shelter and employment. And the woman, who knew a kind heart when she saw her, welcomed her in, and soon the two had settled down. And the maid worked hard and kept everything clean. And whenever she made the lady's bed, the lady was Frau Holle. She always made sure that she shook the feather mattress. And sometimes feathers would fly out of the mattress. And in some parts of Germany, when it is snowing, they still say, oh, they are Frau Holle's feathers from her mattress. People have very long memories. And so all was well, and the girl was happy. She was well fed. She liked her work. She liked Frau Holle. She liked tending the little garden. But after some time, she realised that there was an ache inside. And when she stopped to think about it, she realised she was homesick. She said to Frau Holle, "I've been very happy here, but now I think it is time for me to go home." And Frau Holle agreed. So when the maiden left the house, a little shower of golden coins came down from the doorway, and she placed them all in her pockets. So when she went home to her stepmother and her stepsister, she gave them the gold that Frau Holle had given to her. And the stepmother thought about this and thought, gold. My own daughter needs some of that. So she sent her own daughter out to sit by the well spinning. And after some time, the stepdaughter dropped her spindle down the well, and she jumped in after it. And she found herself in the strange land. And she walked along the path. And when she went past the oven, she heard voices, as the loaves of bread were calling to her, saying, take us out of the oven, for we are burning." But the girl said, "I'm far too busy. I have to find Frau Holle." So she carried along the path until she came to the apple tree, and the apple tree asked her for help. The apple tree asked her to shake the branches so that the apples would fall to the ground and so people could. But the maid said, "I'm too busy. I can't stop to help you. I need to find Frau Holle." So the young maid carried on, and she reached the little cottage with tended vegetable patch, and there was Frau Holle standing at the doorway, as if she'd been expecting her. So the stepdaughter worked for Frau Holle, but she did everything grudgingly. She did everything badly. She did everything quickly. And when she swept the room, she would kill the spiders. And after some time, Frau Holle said, "It is time for you to go." And the maid was glad to be released from the service, but she didn't like the work. And she opened the door to leave the cottage, expecting that she would be covered with a shower of gold coins. A bucket of pitch rained down on her, and for the rest of her life, her hands were stained black from the pitch. At one level, it's quite a simple story because it's just work is rewarded, which is what usually happens in stories. But there's also the whole thing about going down into something, like Alice goes down the rabbit hole of finding another land. I don't know if we're maybe going down into our subconscious or something. Now, it's a story about a spindle. This is a drop spindle. They spin like this. A spinning wheel just takes one of these, places it kind of horizontally, and then there's a drive band that turns the spindle. It's the spindle that puts the twist into yarn. There is a story that goes around spinning circles. Spinning is quite a sociable thing to do, by the way. There's a story. Sometimes it's Nepal or Tibet. Sometimes it's Latin America, but there is a story about these things. They go back to the dawn of time, if you like, but they've never completely gone away. I was demonstrating spinning with a drop spindle a few years ago, and a Portuguese lady said in her village at home they still use these. because they are very easy to make, easy to store, and great advantage of these is that you can walk around as you're spinning. Once you have a spinning wheel, you have to sit down. And so the story goes that there's women in a poor village and they're using their drop spindles, and they make yarn and they make stuff and they sell it, and they're making clothes and blankets for their families, da 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 da. And a kind of Northern Hemisphere development agency comes in and says, oh, we can give you spinning wheels. We can provide you with spinning wheels, and then you'll be so much more productive. You'll be able to make so much more yarn. Won't that be? And the women sort of say, oh, that's so kind of you. Look, we don't want to seem like we're ungrateful or anything. It's so kind, but we're really happy with our drop spindles, because when you have one of these, you can walk around and you can go and you can talk to your friends and exchange. Women do not gossip, women just exchange news. And perhaps they tell stories, because to spin a yarn is to tell a story as well as to spin a fleece or flax, or actually you can use banana yarn, you can use all sorts of things, but to spin this into yarn, into usable thread. There are stories coming up about spinning. We'll probably get to Rumpelstiltskin at some stage. I always feel a bit sorry for Rumpelstiltskin. The image of taking straw and spinning it into gold, that is possible, by the way. Honestly, really. When you see flax, the Old English word for flax is linwort. Something made out of lin is linen, in the same way that something made out of wood is wooden. So flax looks like straw, and you spin it and you turn it into linen, and then you sell the linen, which is how you turn it into gold. And of course, when you spin linen, it doesn't join on as easily as sheep's fleece does. You need to, well, you either have a little dish of water and dip your fingers in it, or you just use a little bit of universal solvent and just lick. So all that really expensive Georgian table linen was made with a little bit of the saliva from poor Irish women. So we will get to Rumpelstiltskin. There are lots of stories about spinning. There's a Native American story, but I'm sorry, I can't remember which tribe, where spinning is a gift from Grandmother Spider. Spiders, of course, are master spinners and weavers. You're probably ahead of me here, but of course the word spinster is a woman who spins, and so later it came to mean an unmarried woman. So there we are. Stay tuned. Lots more stories coming up. Stories about all kinds of things. We're going to carry on with spinning yarn.